Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. In today's video, we are going to add some trees and sort of start to bring some things forward in the current painting we're working on. So, in our previous videos leading up to this, you can watch every single part, episode, whatever you want to call it, and we'll show you individually how we're putting this together with the sky, the clouds, the mountains, the ocean. And today again we're going to go into some trees to sort of break things up so everything doesn't look quite so boring. Just some mountains and some water is kind of a generic little scenario. So what we're going to do is I'm going to throw a couple little trees into our mountains at various levels so that again we'll break it up and show some different planes. Have a couple down here on the bottom, and this side we're going to gradually bring over like a shoreline that is coming this way. So we're gonna change it up a little bit and sort of finish out some of this with some shoreline that kind of wraps around this. That's going to set us up for a waterfall that we're going to bring right off of here. So this is going to get really fun and dynamic, guys, so appreciate you coming along for the ride, watching the paintings as they're unfolding here. So the very first thing we're going to do is I've got a real small sort of liner brush, not too many bristles going on here, and I want this to be very small. So I'm going to dip this in water, and just the water, you can see it brings it to a real fine point even before I touch any kind of paint. And I want these to be very, very tiny indications of trees. So they are just going to be little tiny dots. And they're going to be fairly dark actually. So we're going to get some brown and some green together. And I want this again to be dark so that they don't really have a lot of definition to them. Okay, and so I've got a pretty dark brownish green color going on here. Okay, and I've got this really thin again with the water on the brush. So I'm going to come up in here and just steady myself so I can make very small indications. Okay, and this is pretty dark, so you may not be able to see it too well. Alright, and I want these strokes to be very small. These are just going to be indications of some trees. So I've got this pretty thin, which also doesn't give you very good coverage. Okay, so I may need to lighten this color just a tad to have this kind of show up. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little more green, a little less of the brown, and this will automatically lighten just a tad. There we go. Okay, so we just want to add these little bits in here and show some indications of some trees. Alright. So again, guys, as you go out into nature, and if you're watching my channel, I hope you appreciate nature, because that's pretty much all I'm going to be painting. But we're gonna try and mimic the form of what we see out in nature. What does it really look like in the colors and the shapes and all those sorts of things? Okay, so that's what we're really looking for when it comes time to put down some paint on the canvas, is if you can go out into nature and you can kind of look out there and see what does it actually look like. A lot of times you'll be very surprised at what it turns out to be versus what you thought it was. Okay, so we're gonna just keep putting in a few little indications of some things going on. Okay, and this doesn't have to be too intense or too frequent. Okay, so we just want to give some little indications of things at different planes, and this will add to the depth of our painting. So I've got some green with a little bit of brown going on, and just trying to get some pieces in here that will sort of indicate that we've got some trees happening here, and maybe there's one going on there. Okay, so I just want to have a couple little areas that have this tree line look to it. And we're just putting these in a few places. This is not going to be the entire episode of just putting in some trees on the mountains here. But these little green areas give it that center of breakup. Okay, and again, the smaller we make these, the farther away things look. And we're just putting some indications. These are very thin, very thin. I'm purposely using my very thin brush. And I've even thinned out some of that paint. Getting the brush wet immediately makes it thinner, so it doesn't cover quite as much. So if you need to come back a second time, that's okay. Put a little more paint on there is always all right. Okay, so we're just going to have some indications here and there of, again, some nice mountain trees. We'll have little lines of trees going on. Okay, so we got a few things going on in there. We'll put a little bit, couple up in here. Again, we just want these real small. Don't want these to stand out too much. You want to vary the height of what you're putting in here. And this one's sort of a darker area. Okay, so we may need a little bit more of a light coloration over the top to get that to show up as we need it to. Okay. And sometimes breaking these planes where it's on top a little bit kind of shows some variation to it. So if you don't have very thick paint, acrylic paint is not usually very thick. So sometimes you'll have to paint over it a couple of times to really get it to show. And that's all right. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because we got a lot of other good stuff going on. So we've got some little bit of green going on in there. I am going to throw a little bit of just barely little bit of lighter color as some highlights so that we can sort of see these things. Okay, I just want to throw a little bit, just a tiny bit to them so they kind of stand out. They got a little pop to them. Again, we don't want flat color. We want to create some dimension to some things. So this light on dark is always the easy way to do that. Okay, so if we just got some indications of where some light could be showing on them, we don't really know, but it makes them not look so flat. It kind of makes them stand up. You can sort of see where they are. That green is not quite so bright. Come back here for a little more. Okay, looking good. I like what we're working with here. So just these little pieces, guys, little highlights sometimes is all that it really takes to make it pop. All right, so now we can really see those. I like how they stand out. I'm gonna get just a little bit more. I see this one little tree right here is kind of being neglected. And having that overlap into the bottom of that little area. Okay, it creates those extra little planes, and that's what makes it fun to look at. Okay, so think about what would somebody else see if they were looking at your painting. Okay, are they gonna see the things back here? And if you can't see them very well and you know that they're there, somebody else might not be able to see them very well either. Okay, so take that view of the the onlooker from the outside. Okay, so now we're going to add some, wash this out just so it doesn't dry out with paint on it. Scribble out most of that water. Okay. So now we're going to add over here, like I said, we're going to add some water and sort of a rounded effect, and we're going to bring that up to some kind of land issue right here into the middle, so that we can have over in this edge again the waterfall that comes down. So we're going to make this fairly dark. As it comes closer, it's going to get darker towards us. So I'm going to have a good amount of black and brown that I'm going to mix up over here. See if I can find a place on my palette. Okay, and this does not have to be perfect, guys. Okay, so wipe this out flat and get us some on the edge of the knife here. But we want a real dark color as the base. We can always put something else over the top of it and give it a little bit of movement to it. Okay, so I want to come in about right here. So now that we've got that put on there, I'm just going to wipe the paint off of my knife. And we're going to come back in and we are going to work with some more green. So in the beginning, we're going to start with a smaller brush. Okay, so we've got sort of these brightish green tree situations going on. I'm going to grab just a tad of brown. Okay, mix this up a little bit of again, a darker green color so that if we put some lighter color over the top, it gives that highlight. It gives us a little bit more that we can see. Okay, I'm going to throw a few little tree lines in here. All right, and as they get closer, they can get a little bit taller. So as we start to come around this, we're going to make them a little bit longer in a sense, and they will also start to get a little more detailed. Okay. So we're just going to keep adding to this. Got a little bit going on there. And then we're going to break it up a little bit, so we don't want it to be solid trees all the way around, because as you can see, this is kind of a sometimes trees. Okay. I'll just put a little dark on those. Good. Sometimes you see stuff later on, and that's what you want it to be doing. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit more of this green to my color. Keep mixing it up on my little brush here. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to start to have some that get a little bit closer to us. And again, this brown paint is still wet, so if you need to wipe that off and come back to your initial color, that's okay. We're doing this for the sake of speed. All right, so we may pick up some of this color because it's wet. For you, you can wait if you want after you've put this sort of brown color on here and wait till it's dry and then come back for the trees. That's totally fine. Okay, so as we're coming around this corner here, okay, we're just gonna put some more green in here and indicate some trees. Again, it's still kind of far away, so as this gets closer, as we come around this corner, we'll start to see some actual foliage develop here. So the height of your layers, guys, is very, very, very important. So again, I want this to be a nice green color in here. I want this to be real indicative that these are some trees going on, and they just sort of blend off into nothing over here. Now we're going to start getting a little bit taller as we come around this corner. And we want to again break that plane. picks up instantly. Instantly covers. Okay, so I don't want to do that too much. So we may need to work on another piece. And I don't want this solid, okay? And I didn't want to do a typical fan brush type of tap that is an easy way to get a whole bunch of trees all at the same time. I wanted these to be sort of painted individually, but with what we're dealing with in the wet paint being such a dark color that may make it a little bit tough to keep putting on this lighter color the way it is. Okay, so I'm considering pausing right here. And again, we haven't really painted the trees. So what I'm going to do is take a break, let this dry a little bit, and then come back here in the same video, and we'll pick right back up with where we want our trees to start forming and coming out. So we'll give it just a minute, and we'll come right back and continue with the trees. So we're going to keep adding a few more trees in here on this water line, and just nice light touch. And it doesn't have to be very detailed because we still want this to have an indication of being kind of far away. All right, so we are going to continue around this corner as mentioned, but we're going to add a pathway. And so this will help indicate more distance as well, where the pathway will kind of disappear behind some of the trees. So we want to leave pieces of this open so you can sort of see a continuation of where that pathway is going to go, and the trees around it is what's going to start to stand out a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to separate from this little group of trees right here, and I'm going to put some in the back, very small. Okay, so just little light touches here. And again, if you want to thin down your paint, you can put a little bit of water on your brush and sort of adjust as you go. All right, but this just a little bit of indication of some of these spikes of color look like trees in the background. Okay, so I don't want a ton. We're just going to have a few going on here, and then we'll continue to work forward in a little bit brighter colors. So farther away, it's kind of subdued and dark and shadowy, and then as we come forward we can use a little bit lighter colors to have a little more contrast in the details. Okay, so I'll probably switch from the little micro brush. We've got some of the back stuff going on, and to cover some ground a little faster, we can use our trusty fan brush. So I'm going to get this wet just to sort of loosen up the bristles a little bit, take most of that water off so it's not thinning out too much. And we're going to get a little bit bigger grouping of our color here, and we'll start to make some trees going on. So again, as we come forward with these trees and they get more detailed, then we can start to actually add some branches and some indications of some lateral motions going on. Okay, so I'm still going to stay pretty dark with the color as we're in the back, and we always want to start with a darker color anyway, so that if we do put some light on top of it, it will show. Okay, so I'm just going to put a few in the back over here. All right, and you can just use the tip of it as necessary. Okay, I got a little more paint on there. And you can change up the colors of this, really create some depth going on. There we go. Okay, and pay attention to this base right here, because again, we want our path to come around this, so we don't want to get too far in where it comes to looking like some trees. Okay, so we just want to add a few in here. And these indications is all we really need in the background. As they get closer and closer, then we can add more detailed pieces as it goes on. And again, this dark color is just the base. We're going to put some stuff over this in the future that will really make it look a little more natural than just a giant mud puddle. So I'm putting a little more green on here, and again, paying attention to where the bottom of this shows up. And we're just gonna push this out a little bit. Okay. And I'm gonna have some that come a little bit higher up over this as a detailed piece. So we're really just kind of putting in some indicators right now. These are not going to be the end of our tree line. Okay. So we really want to have some pieces in here that we can see. And it does really sort of fade off into nothing at the end. Okay, so we're just going to have a few little indicators there. Let's come onto the other side of this. And again, we just want to use the little tip here to sort of control where this comes out. Okay. And I like this brush because it gives the trees a little bit of texture as well. If you do an upward brush, they become very smooth, whereas when you pat the brush like this, they have a little more texture to them. Okay, and texture indicates detail. Okay, so I did get a little green paint on there, so I'm literally just right away while it's still wet, kind of rub it in with my finger a little bit, sort of make it look like a reflection if you want. And again, if you mess up, you can always just paint over it a little bit. Okay, so we're just putting a few more indications of some more textured trees on this other side here. So I'm just continuing to add a little bit more green to my color here. Pretty simplistic. Okay, and we want to leave some of these areas open. All right, so we don't want to have every piece covered. Right, so again, some of this will look like it's coming around the bend, and we're going to add a few more little trees in here, and we can even again start to throw in a little more detail on what those little trees look like. Okay, and you can just add trees as thick or as thin as you want, but don't cover up all the area behind it, because that's what shows the depth, when you can sort of see through the trees a little bit. Okay, so we're getting up here a little bit closer to ourselves. I'm just going to put a little bit more dabs in here, get a little more dimension with some of this lighter color. Okay. We got sort of a little forest going on. And it's okay if it just kind of fades out to the back over here, because these are going to be closer trees. Okay. So as it comes forward, again, we're going to get more detailed. So I know I've said this several times, but now I'm going to put a little bit of white in here and mix it in with my green. Now again, this is going to make it very light very quickly, so if you get too much, you can just throw a little more green back in there. All right. And I'm going to put just a little bit of brown to darken it. So it seems kind of silly to make it light and dark. But adding the white is simply a brightener, and then you add the dark back to it, and it makes it a different shade of the green. So you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. So as we start to get a little bit closer, see how much different that color is now. Okay, so we're just going to add a few more of these detailed pieces over here. And we're going to throw a couple in here and start to have this kind of come along with it. Okay, so again, the vertical indicates that trees are growing, and maybe these aren't all trees to you. As it gets closer, it could look less like bushes unless you start to detail a little bit into the actual trees themselves. Okay, so this color difference is going to allow it to stand out against that darker background. Okay, so we can start to put in some little tree branches if we want. Make it look a little more like a tree, less like just some vertical sticks out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So again, just little pieces, guys. That's what makes this really pop. Okay, so I'm just going to fill this in a little bit, and then we're going to come over the top with even, a little more color. So this is not a fast process. If you were here for a 5-minute tutorial on how to paint a tree, that's not what we're doing here. We're going to continue painting a painting. The painting is a development of these techniques, like I'm telling you, the light and dark contrast. Okay, so we got a little bit of heavy over here. I just want to make sure that I'm putting in some pieces that can really allow this to stand out. Okay, but I don't want that dark to kind of disappear. Okay, so let's come back in and add a little bit more of a light color in here. Again, give it some of that differentiation. Now, we've got some sort of shapes going on, and we're getting close enough where, again, we need to start making this look like a tree. So what I'm going to do is get a little bit more of a dark color. So we're going to go back into our brown, and I'm going to touch just a little bit of this green so it's not a pure brown. I want this to stay fairly dark with me. So let's get a little black, a little more brown, and we're going to make sort of a background looking color. Okay, so it's not super dark, but it'll definitely show up on here. Okay. And so we're going to draw just a little bit of a tree right here. All right, and now I'm getting, while I have this darker color on here, I'm going to get some of this lighter color of the more greenish tint, and we're going to put a little tree together. So we just want to use the little tip of this thing right here in very small touches. Okay, it doesn't take much to really make this tree come out. And just sort of a zigzag pattern. Okay, so again, I want to keep this very, very small. We want this to indicate that there is a tree there. And the smaller it is, the farther away it will look. The bigger things are, the closer they look. Okay, so just a little bit of a shape of a tree. So that got a little bit light for me, so I'm going to add a little bit more brown to my color again. Get our little tree working in there. Because I really want this one to stand out a little bit. There we go. Okay, so sort of just back and forth. And we need that dark color there, so that when we do put some light over the top of it, it really shows through. Okay? So again, guys, this is not a fast tutorial. We're going to continue to do some fun stuff and enjoy ourselves, but I really want you to see the technique as well as the development of each piece individually. Okay? So we've got our sort of dark coloration going on there. I'm going to dip back into my white, and I just keep using this same dirty brush, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be clean all the time and perfect, especially if you can get multiple colors to come together with virtually no effort. Not only can you save time, but it really makes it look a lot more realistic. Okay, so I'm just going to put a couple of these little taps of some of this highlight color to allow this tree to sort of stand out. Okay, so again, we're still indicating a kind of far away situation. Right? So I don't want this to be too distinct. I'm just going to brush these sideways just a tad to kind of give it some motion and connection. There we go. Okay, so just a few little pieces. And you can do this in several layers as you want, so if you really want it to be, even lighter, we can go back into our white and just kind of dab that off into some of the green, because again, I've got this dirty brush, so any of these colors that I pick up are not going to be pure. Okay, so we can have just a little tree indication going on. All right, and so now we've got some things going on here. Can throw out a little limb there, whatever. And we can continue to add some more as this comes along. Now I want this to be the edge of sort of a cliff. So as we come forward and we get into building our rock structure, some of this I want to have some depth between this, so then it kind of falls off in front of these pieces. So these are more of an area that has a face to it. So we keep that with a dark color, and then the front will be a little lighter so we can kind of see that difference of pieces going on there too. So let's get a bigger tree going on over here. So I'm gonna sort of pat off some of this brush here, and let's get our little bit finer brush. Let's put that one in the water for now. They wash out real easy, and you can make another paint real fast. Okay, so we've got some of our green. Again, we're going to get some brown going on. I really like a little darker colored brown there. So we really want to have some detail. And detail, again, guys, comes from the contrast of light to dark. Okay, so we want to have a fairly dark color in the back to show the shadows that will then allow the lighter colors in the front to pop over the top. Okay, so I'm just going to throw a little detail mark in here, indicate a little trunk. Okay, so I've got this little brush here with sort of an edge to it, but I'm just going to pull it out flat so it's got sort of a fine point. And I want this to come over here, but I don't want it to, really cover over the top of everything here. So we're going to just start it real here, and nice light touch. You can make the indication of the trunk, okay? So we're just going to pull this down flat. Now I'm not using a super dark color. It's actually almost the same color as this. Because again, I still want to indicate some distance. Okay, so we just want that nice light little touch, and then we'll just kind of, again, go back and forth and indicate a little tree line going on. So just little taps. And it's okay to break a little bit and have it not be perfectly grown up. Okay, maybe there's one little branch that does its own little thing. Okay, so we've got, again, a darker indication. And so we want to make sure that we leave some of that dark in the back for it to really show what this tree is doing. Boy, that matched that color very, very closely. Okay, so we want to have a little bit of color over the top. Let's put a second one. Let's give him a little friend. That's what Bob always said. If you guys haven't watched Bob Ross, that guy's amazing. That's what I learned from. Okay, so let's give him just a little friend right here that's just a little shorter. Okay, and again, I don't want too much of this trunk to show. We just want that indication of a thing going on. A lot of this impressionist painting, guys, is just giving an idea that the mind can figure out and make up the rest of it. Okay? So having a lot of detail is always not the best idea. Okay. So now we've got that going on. I'm just going to pat off some of this darker color, and let's come back into our green here, and just a touch of the yellow. So I just want to lighten this up a little bit. Okay. And again, just a few highlights. Our light sources over here, so the right side of the tree is going to be just slightly lighter color. Okay. And I'm going to lighten this up just a little bit more. A little bit more of that yellow. I really want this to sort of stand out differently there. There we go. Okay. Just a little pops. And this may pick up a little bit of this darker color as you come down. Okay, that's all right. Okay, and again, just on the other one, we want to indicate where those little highlights would show up. Okay, so some of these little indicators that it's a little bit closer, we can see it a little bit better. And I'm just gonna extend these a little bit. Okay, so I got sort of little dots on here. I'm sorry if my hand's in the way with the camera. But I'm just going to pull these a little bit to the side and just kind of lighten them. It also gives that indication of some direction. Okay? So it's okay to go back sometimes, but don't spend forever trying to make it perfect. All right, we've got a little light and dark going on. We've got some trees coming up to the foreground. We've got a little bit of a tree happening over here. I think we need another taller one in there behind it, so we can come back to our darker color that we've been working with here. And again, we're just going to indicate some things. So I'm just going to touch the water a little bit and thin this paint up because I don't need it to be mass coverage. It's sort of in the back, but it allows it to stay very thin. And that gives us the ability to keep a real nice fine point on here. Okay, so maybe we want to have a little tree going on right here. That's what Bob said. You have to make the noises. And you can make up whatever noise you want. Okay, so we've got our little tree there going on. So again, I'm going to come back to my green color. We're going to get a little bit of this green going on it. And again, just real light indicators of the tree. Sort of a zigzag, kind of randomish pattern. Okay, doesn't have to be too intense to be able to see it. And again, that back piece with the trunk in the middle, we're going to cover that just slightly with a little bit of this lighter color. Okay, so I'm going to touch into the yellow just a little bit. And again, I want to sort of replicate kind of some of that color going on over here. And our light source is going to be here, so we're only going to get a few on the very tips of our branches. Okay, we're just going to have little bits that actually show. And these little bits are what show the dimension of the branches. Okay, that was a big one. It's a nice strong branch. That's what we call that. The strength. And as it comes to the bottom, they get a little bit darker as it comes. Okay. And so some of this covering up the middle of these trunks also helps a little bit. And we haven't gotten very bright again, guys. We're still keeping this semi-subdued. Okay, we can even probably put in a couple of other branches in here if we wanted to really thicken up this tree a little bit. Okay. And you can put some of these in here. All right, so one tree at a time, guys. Don't try to paint the whole forest all at once. I did some generalizations in the background that sort of indicate some of that, but we want to really make sure that each tree kind of, as it comes forward, stands out on its own. Okay, so I'm just putting a little bit of lightness to this. There we go. So it sort of gets brighter as it comes again. We're going to add a path in the background that comes up through the middle of this, so this will be a fun little way to continue to add some things. Okay, so we've got our trees going on here. We've got a few in the front. Most of this I want to stay as a rock face. I don't want this to get too close yet because we're going to add another level to this and it's going to continue to drop down. So I'm going to add just a couple more pieces in here that indicate some smaller little tree things and bushes going on. But as far as how to paint trees, this is sort of a background version, and then these are more like the closer ones that have some more detail. And these are sort of mountainous pine type trees. There's a lot of different kinds that you can paint that really will represent where you live. So if you've got different kinds of trees than the ones you're seeing in my picture, that's okay. You can sort of find your own and in your area and make them look like that. So we'll add a few more details of the trees in here, guys. I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next video.